Hello everybody, this is Danny from Deep South Homestead on porch time today. And yes, it is raining again. Welcome to my rainforest. Guys, there's some things that's been happening that I just got to talk about. I have been called a hippie over and over and over again. Danny, why don't you cut that hair off? Oh, my friends, I have been set free. That is why I do not cut my hair off. We're going to talk about that today because, you know, in the beginning, it really offended me. But after a little while, I realized, you know, I said, like the Apostle Paul said, I've been set free. There's things now God has given me freedom with. And I want you to stay with me on this, okay? Now, I'm dressed a little different today. Yes, I am. And today may be a little dramatic. All right, a little different porch time. Nothing wrong with that. Porch time's about different things. And stay with me. I'm going to go somewhere with this. And if you skip through the video, you're going to miss something. And you'll get to the end and you'll go, what was he talking about? I didn't really get that. That's why this one, you can't skip through. Okay. And yes, today in front of me I have a piece of paper. I have done a lot of research on this matter. Not only me, but my wife, Wanda. Y'all can thank her for this because it actually bothered her that people would say something about my hair. And she started off with the agenda of trying to say, well, are they really right? And once she started doing some research herself, she come back and she said, oh my God, Danny, you are 100% right. Okay. First of all, let's look at the paper right here. Now I have the paper in front of me. So if I look down, I don't want to get sidetracked here. I don't want to be chasing rabbits off in some direction. I want to make sure I get this right. Okay? Now this is done research. I have things, actually Wanda wrote this down. I didn't write it down. This is done with lots of research. And I want to just tie this in with some things because I want to see, am I really a hippie? Wait a minute. I could be a homestead hippie. Now that is something to think about. Hey, are you a homestead hippie? You might be, and you didn't know it. Let's take a look and see what a homestead hippie really is. Let's look at some things here. In the 1960s, hippies had an unusual appearance about them. The loud shirts, pretty interesting. They went barefoot. Is going barefoot a wrong thing? I don't know. They wore tie-dyed shirts. Looks like this one. Now, I'm not a tie-dye shirt fan, you know, but hey, the reason for the loud colors was they wanted it to draw attention to what they were talking about. Okay. Does clothes really make a person? I don't think so. I really don't think so. They wore bandanas on their head. How many YouTube channels on Homestead today do you see where men have bandanas on their heads? both young and old. How many women are wearing bandanas on their heads? Does that make you a hippie? The hippies wore them. The hippies went barefooted. Remember my last video? The 6 senses? Or the 5 senses? I'm sorry. The 5 senses in our last video? What was one of them? Feel. What was one of the illustrations I gave you? Walking barefooted in a fresh plowed field. And remember how many of y'all commented and said, wow, I remember walking barefooted in a fresh plowed dirt. Does that make you a hippie? Maybe it did and you just didn't know it. Amazing so far, right? Let's look. They wore long hair. I see a lot of YouTubers out there, homesteaders, wearing long hair. They wore long beards. How many YouTube channels do we see out there that are homesteaders that have big beards? I wouldn't hesitate to say that probably 75 to 80% of all homestead channels I watch, the man has a beard. Does that make him a homestead hippie? Could be. Let's go a little further. They rejected conventional values. What is homesteading all about today? Is it rejecting conventional values? Do you not agree with what your country is doing? And you're trying to take an alternate lifestyle and say, I'm going back to living off the land like my forefathers did because I don't want to have the conventional values of my land today? Does that make you a homestead hippie? Kind of interesting so far, right? Let's look a little deeper. They took a stand against conformity. They didn't want to conform to what society had become. Oh my gosh. Is that what homesteaders do? Wow. You homestead because you don't want to conform to the life around you. You homeschool because you didn't want to conform to what the schools were teaching. Isn't it amazing? Wow. We labeled them hippies because of what they believed, and they did not want to conform to the modern lifestyle. Now, yes, I will throw this in. Some of them used drugs. Oh, but wait a minute. Oh my gosh, guys. There are YouTube channels that you watch that have channels and videos about marijuana use because it's an herb. Do you know that President Nixon during the hippie movement is the one who stopped a cancer cure because it involved the use of marijuana? A derivative, an oil from the extract of marijuana, was found to cure cancer, but because of the hippie movement, President Nixon had it banned. I'm not asking you to believe me. Go do the research. It's there. Now, they took a stand against going along with what others did. Now, let me ask you something. Why do you homestead? To be more self-sufficient? To not have to go to the grocery store? To not be dependent on utilities? Because you don't trust your government? Are you taking a stand against them? Could be. You're looking more like a homestead hippie every day. These things, guys, caught me completely off guard. Let's look a little further. Hippies got their name because they were hip. What does the word hip mean? After doing some research and looking into it, they were aware of what was going on around them and in their society, which made them hip. Thus far is where the term hippies came from. Now, let's talk about this for a minute. You're a homesteader. You try to educate yourself as to what's going on around you and your surroundings. You try to educate yourself on what's going on with society, the food system. Are you doing anything different than the hippies did by educating yourself? Because you see, let's talk about this. The hippies, I'm just using that word, came from a generation of people that went back. Let's just back up here. You had the Great Depression that hit, which we've talked about that. You had the world wars that hit. We've talked about that. Out of the world wars came progress. The factories began to build. People began to move from the countries into the cities because during the war, most of the women had to work. The men were going off to war. And therefore, the big factories came on the scene. Industrialization started happening. The hippies was rejecting this. They wanted to go back to the land because they saw the abuse of what all these factories was doing to the earth and to the land. They saw the chemicals that were being brought in. They saw all these things happening, guys, and they saw the degradation of society through the destruction of land. And they, being a younger generation, realized where things were headed. Where a lot of the older generation had become complacent and said, oh well, we've got to survive. And they're like, no, don't destroy this planet. We want to enjoy what y'all enjoyed as kids, and you're destroying it all. So therefore, they were called hippies because they were hip. They were aware of what was going on around them and to their society and to the world. Now, the hippies protested against the Vietnam War. I look around today and I see more and more homesteaders protesting about what's going on in the world. All they want to do is find 40 acres of land somewhere and build them a house right in the middle of it and say, government, leave me alone. Y'all go fight your, y'all just learn to be at peace with one another. That's what we try to do here on homesteading channels. We try to build community. We are doing nothing no different than the hippies did. A lot of you are going, yeah, but I'm a Vietnam veteran. You know what? I was right there at that era. And let me tell you something. Guys, I've talked to people on the inside of what went on and why we went to war. We went to war over rubber. The Vietnam War was predominantly, had a lot to do with the production of rubber. We wanted rubber that the Vietnam people had. They didn't want to give it to us, so we bullied them into trying to take it from them. A lot of good men lost their lives fighting for what they believed was freedom. And I'm not saying that I'm not downgrading the Vietnam era. I think any veteran that ever served deserves every right they can get. They deserve every benefit they get. I myself wanted to be a Navy SEAL. I believe in my country, and I still do believe in my country. I don't like everything my country does. No more than these people didn't like what their country was doing at that particular time. I don't like right now that my country's sticking its nose in everybody else's business across the world. I don't like that. But I can't stop it. No more than they could stop it. They just protested. So are we any different? Are we really any different? Now don't get upset with me and don't get mad at me. Stay with me and let's look at this. The hippies like different types of music. Some of it was psychedelic music. Now, I'm not into that. But a vast majority of them like music like folk music. They wanted to go back to the folk music time. And because of those who liked the psychedelic music, the folk music got overlooked. But there was a large majority of them that loved folk music. I like folk music. I know lots of YouTubing and homesteading friends of mine that love folk music. Does that make us a homestead hippie because we like folk music too? Something to think about. They dropped out and abandoned an accepted lifestyle, thus deeming them as hippies. Guys, you're homesteading. Why are you homesteading? Because you're abandoning the lifestyle that surrounds you. You're trying to drop out of society. How many people are sitting out there going, oh my God, I just want land. I just want to be in the middle of a big piece of land and I don't want to be on grid. I want to be off grid. Why? Because you're abandoning society. You don't like having to pay an electric bill. You want to be free. You are no different than the hippies were. Sobering, isn't it? To stop and actually think about, once you do some research into this, where do I fit in this puzzle? Well, let's look. They rejected, one of the biggest issues was they rejected mainstream society. Oh my God, guys. What do homesteaders do? They reject mainstream society. I'm keeping my kids home. I'm homeschooling my kids. We're raising our own food. We're going to raise what we eat. Why? Because we want to eat organic. Why do we eat organic? Because we're rejecting the society out there, guys. They're poisoning our food. And we're trying to eat organic. The hippies did the same thing. They rejected society and where it was going. They wanted a more sustainable lifestyle. They wanted the land. They loved the land. The organic movement is all about preserving the land and eating healthy. Are you a homestead hippie? You might be. Let's look a little deeper. They were all involved in health foods. They were all involved in saving the planet. Wow. They wanted a broader acceptance of other people. Guys, I don't know how else to say it. I just told you. We're all about eating organic. We're trying to save the planet. Man has just destroyed it with chemicals. You know, we've got glyphosate, now dicamba. We have, you know, it's just been all through the years. We have just destroyed the planet with chemicals. And part of the homesteading movement is about going organic. because we want to save the planet. My friends, that is exactly where the hippies were at. They saw the destruction of the planet and they wanted to save it from all the chemicals. But productivity, ease of life, the convenient lifestyle, a microwave society that was being created, came into existence, and they were rejected because they went against society. They didn't fit in. Well, you know what? I've never fit in anywhere in my life. I never have. I was always the kid. Y'all stay away from him because he doesn't follow the rules. Oh, to be a free thinker, that makes you wrong. You better understand that in the modern society, if you can think on your own, oh my God, you are wrong because you have an opinion. Imagine that. Let's look a little further. 50 years from now, how will historians view this generation? What will we be called? We certainly won't be called the homesteaders of America. We won't be called homesteaders probably, because that went on back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, some 1700s. What will we be called? We won't be called hippies, although we have a lot of the same interests that they had. Could it be that in 50 years from now we will be called the homesteading hippies? Because we took a stand. We didn't like what our country was doing. We didn't like our food system. We didn't like what the government was doing. We didn't like having to pay electric bills. We wanted to live off grid. We wanted to be free. We didn't want our kids to go to public schools. We wanted to homeschool our kids. We wanted to have our own animals. We wanted to raise our own foods. We wanted to put organic. We want everything to be organic. How will we be deemed 50 years from now? What will we be called? Will we be called the homesteading hippies of America? Something to think about. Okay, guys. Let me get in here close to you. What defines us as a homesteader? Is it off grid? Does that make you a homesteader? Raising your own food, does that make you a homesteader? Wearing a big beard, most homesteaders do. Does that make you a homesteader? Lots of guys have long hair hanging down. Does that make you a homesteader? You live in an apartment and you have something growing on your balconies or out inside the windowsills. Does that make you an urban homesteader? You have a little backyard in your city lot where you raise some of your vegetables. Does that make you a homesteader? What makes you a homesteader today? I'm going to sum it up with this. Your mentality. How you mentally see things around you is what determines whether or not you are a homesteader. You can be a homesteader anywhere you live. Homesteading involves a lot of things. Successful homesteaders are also great preppers. Do you live in the city and you do a lot of prepping? If you do, you're probably a homesteader. So guys, homesteading is a mentality thing. Not necessarily a big land thing like it was in the beginning. Not necessarily huge gardens. Homesteading is a mental thing. And at some point, I've always told y'all I would tell you these things, at some point it will become a mental disorder. Because just like the hippies, you are going against mainstream society. Hippies are looked down upon because they went against mainstream society. They bulked the government. Homesteaders today are quietly doing this, but they are also bulking the government. Now let me mention something else, and I know the video is getting a little long. Hang in there with me, because anytime I do a video, I love to tie it into the Bible. Okay? I do the first part of the video for those who just like that kind of stuff. But for those who want to hear a biblical standpoint about something, I always like to put that in there too. So I'm going to put this at the end. There was a man in the Bible by the name Apostle Paul. After doing tons of research, looking way back into all this, and don't ask me to give you all the links down below because I'm not going to do it, take too much. Do your own research. The Apostle Paul wore his hair almost to the bottom of his shoulder blades. That's what history teaches us. 2 of the disciples never cut their hair. One of them was Jesus' own brother. I'll let you figure out who the other one was. Christ wore his hair down. The big question is, what is long hair? And so many people are going to take the verse in Corinthians, was it chapter 11, verse 14, somewhere along in that area. It's a shame for a man to have long hair. That is a verse that is taken out of context in the Bible. Because if you look, you got to read right before that passage, you got to read right after it. Right before it, Apostle Paul, as I've mentioned this in some videos before, was addressing a congregation of people where the congregation had begun to grow, and a lot of different denominations and religions had come into this congregation and accepted the Lord as their Savior, and they were trying to bring some of their lifestyles in with them. And they told the Apostle Paul, doesn't a woman have to cover her head when she prays? There's a question mark. Look at the punctuation. Is it a shame for a man to have long hair? Question mark. The Apostle Paul is addressing some questions. The Apostle Paul answers it in the verses right after that. He said, my friends, is not a woman's hair given to her for a covering? In other words, he's saying, does a woman have to keep her head covered? She has hair. Her hair is for her covering. So she doesn't have to have a covering. As for a man's long hair, he answers the second part with this. As far as the church, we have no such customs. So guys, all of you who sit back and you rant and you rave about somebody who has long hair, let it go. My wife that passed away, I'm going to tell y'all what her last words was. She spoke to me. This was sobering to me, and I never did figure it out until several years later. She looked up at me and she told me, she says, Danny, I see the other side. Got my attention right quick like. Long hair plays no part in it. Never cut your hair again. I am so sorry all these years I told you to keep your hair cut. Because it means absolutely nothing. And she died. I've never forgot those words, guys. I don't think her last words to me would have been a lie. And after doing research on top of research, and finding out the things I found out about history, she was right. She was trying to tell me, live and be free. So thank you guys for watching today. I hope it hadn't been too controversial. A little bit of foolishness, a lot of fun. Just trying to have a good time and education at the same time. We love you. See you on the next Porch Time. Thank you from Deep South Homestead.